this little 1 acre space being a long journey. And you look at the crooked path, obviously physically it makes for a longer journey, but you start looking at all that this crooked path does. It focuses your idea, your view, it slows you down. So each time you approach, here's view 1 of the mountain. View 2, it turns you. You get a frame view of a painted boat and view the willow tree. 3, back to the mountainscape itself. 4, turns you back into the pavilion as a close-up view entering your pavilion. 5, 6. And so the designer knew exactly what he was framing, exactly what he was showing you each time he turned you, each time you framed a view. And then as you get to the end, you stand on that rock, you look back to the waterfall and 1,000 degrees shrouded in thick clouds. So there's all kinds of crooked path journeys on our garden, which makes our mortal journey longer. Then in the painting, and I've shown you the painting, and I could go back to it, but in the lower right-hand corner, there's the top. There's this little side stream. So in this journey, in your mortal life, in the painting, you look off to your side, and all of a sudden you catch this little side stream over here. And so you have this, in our garden, it's the half window circled in green. And what's interesting is even this little piece of wall almost looks like a little waterfall if you squint. Right? And you got the rocks. And one of the things I love about the half window circled in green is this is obviously part of the big lake. But when you're in the window and you step back and you let the window frame it, and especially in the summer when you have that wall of trees right here, this looks like a stream, and it's not a lake. Right? And so that becomes the little side stream. It's a little dark to see it on this one. But you turn from your little side stream, and as you come off the bridge, you start bumping into a few more people, and you're turning to the marketplace of society, and same thing here, a few people hanging around the marketplace of society, and then the true marketplace of our society right here. Right? And then you come into the public realm in the painting, and you have this, the public realm, the public discourse, and here you have it in our garden right here. And then as you turn and you leave the public marketplace, you start heading up. And so here you have the daily journey. This is daily journey through the forest of our highest aspirations. Get a little poetic, when you're doing this after doing too many hours, right? So every now and then it comes out. So there's and we have these forest walks in our garden. This is obviously the one along the west wall between the painted boat and the lawn. There's another one between flowers watching spring rain and the crabapple tree, and that's another forest pocket, essentially, in the garden. But this is our longest forest walk. And how it relates to the painting, again, it's a little hard to see, but again, you look at that canyon walk through here. And then as you get higher up in the mountain and you're starting to rise up in your life, and you see the waterfalls, and there's again, going back to Chinese mythology, there's the myth of Panju, which was the beginning of creation. And it sort of became the middle zone between human and earth and humans. And let's see. In waterfalls and mountains, we talk about the development of the spiritual consciousness confers humility and balance to a small person living within this painting. There's all kinds of things when you're talking about water, and in this Panju myth of creation, that the veins are roadways and blood of water and so forth. But obviously, pretty similar in form when you're walking along our pathway to our waterfall. And then you finally get to this Buddhist temple halfway up. And again, when you're talking about, fortunately you get it, I got a good scan off of this. When you're talking about the quality of this painting, look at, this is why he's considered probably the finest Chinese landscape painter. I mean, the detail on this is just fantastic, and the way he does these trees along with the pavilion is absolutely amazing. And so then there's all kinds of ideas of the high point of our garden reaching up there into the sky. And so the idea of a tower, also in Chinese architecture, and pagoda reaching up into the sky. This is probably the most famous pagoda that's still around. And you look at the scale. There's a man sitting in the Daodong up here. He'd be sitting like right up in one of these right in here. And so here you have this here. But again, getting back to this Buddhist heaven, and as it relates to the painting, even though you can reach this Buddhist temple, the idea of Buddha's heaven is you're constantly involved in rebirth, and you can reach another realm, but humans and animals or other beings, because heaven is only temporary and part of the samsara, Buddhist cycle. And so you only reach this temple for so long, but you notice even in the painting, this is sort of you end up coming back down through these passageways. And the idea of that this painting is solitary temple amid clearing peaks and not a foggy peak. It's clearing, and that you may be up there with the gods briefly, but it's clearing, and you're coming back to reality again. And so he's never assuming in that painting that you're actually leaving that. So here's the couplet on the outside of the hall brocaded clouds. And it's not, content-wise, not my favorite, but it's sort of a very interesting one. Riding the hanging garden, I sail west over the great ocean. So that's the symbol of garden, hanging garden. Okay? The idea of hanging garden, this is right from Charles' book, and it ties into this idea of the pagoda and the Buddhist temple up there. This is a poem from 340 BCE. I started out in the morning on my way from Jiangsu. By evening, I had arrived at the hanging garden. I wanted to stay a while in these fairy precincts, but the swift-moving sun was dipping to the west. So again, that poem, reaching that temple, but not being able to stay. And then Charles talks about this continuation of this guy named David Hawkes about the hanging garden, again, hanging garden. And the hanging garden is a terrestrial paradise on the mythical mountain of Kunlun. Is described as an ancient cosmographical writing as the god's footstool on earth and the gateway to heaven. So our whole brocaded clouds is the footstool to heaven, but it's still on earth. And the same thing with the temple in the painting. And then again, those mountains out there, a little bit harder to reach, but beyond the temple. And you look at the way that I know it's hard to see there, depicting the mountain here and our type of rock here, and even the shapes of the mountain in our stepping into the cloud rock right there. And then there's as you go into the upper right of the painting, you have that clouded, shrouded vista that is out there. So it talks about, again, this whole idea of seeing things of the mountain and talking about journeys. We talk about the Hongshan, which was only about 250 miles west of Suzhou. It's still a very difficult place to get to, even in today's world. And so probably the number of scholar officials from Suzhou that actually got out to Hongshan was probably not all that many. It was a pilgrimage of a lifetime to get out to those mountains. Here in the United States, you have Yosemite, which is pretty much the same thing. And what I talk about in my tours is that knowing the fish pavilion, the whole idea of experiencing the garden is very small. And you're standing here in this pavilion, and you're looking through the frame view of these trees, the golden rain tree and this magnolia. It frames the view of the top of that rock. I talk about it as that there's El Capitan out there. A climber on that cliff would just be a speck out there 15 miles away. You would just be a speck in that experience. You're hearing the buses and helicopters, but you're just a speck in that view. And talking about future journeys, sort of finishing up with my own little thing, is that when you're you're talking about journeys, you think about your own life. You know, I lived in San Francisco for a year and a half. I never got to Yosemite. My wife and I were in Perth. We never got north to Bali or China. So, here you are, and you see these rocks, and you talk about these little journeys and what it would be like to journey in your own version of a journey for yourself. So, wrap it up with that. So, thanks for listening to me.
Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah. Question. The Hall of Brocade Clouds, how did it get that name? I mean, why is it named the Hall of Brocade Clouds?
Well, I think there was a whole discussion, and Charles Wood was really instrumental in talking to us about it. But there was a series of poets that worked with the designers of Suzhou Design Institute, and they were the ones that sort of put together the poetic names while they were designing the garden. And so all of our poetic names are sort of plays on different ones. And obviously Cloudcat, Flowers Washed in Spring Rain, and all those other ones are very concrete. You understand them. But the Hall of Brocaded Clouds, that's where I got into so much about what is it? Why is it that the clouds, and you're trying to commingle? It's that it's our festival. It's our last earthly step before you get into the clouds. Is why it then becomes the epitome of the hierarchy of the garden.
So because it's the most important building, that's why it has the cloud name?
Yeah, it's the highest status. When you talk about important, it's interesting when you use the word important. The last time the master designer was here in the garden, I asked him about this hierarchy. And I talked about the status of the hierarchy. And he said all of the pavilions are important. All the pavilions are like a face. And you can't have a face without an eye or a nose. And so they're all important. And so, it was partly sort of I felt it was a master craftsman's answer to you're bumping into this sort of sacred territory here, guy. But it's an important distinction, that they're all important for the experience of the family, all important for the composition, but there is a status still.
I think also, with the Hall of Brocade Cloud, that is considered the formal reception area. And so, the way it's designed, it's laid out very formally. It has that beautiful carved panels of the three friends. And I think even the name, when you say brocade cloud, see, it kind of, I think, sounds just a lot more.
And all the windows that kind of replace the walls, is that part of the effective brocade cloud? When you have all the windows and the walls in the hall, is that sort of adding to the effect that you're in the clouds there, maybe? You can see the sky?
Oh, because it's more
I was told.
Yeah.
I was told that the windows, that the reflection of the lake on the windows makes a shimmering look like brocade, like the cloth of brocade, which kind of shimmers.
So is that from the inside or outside?
Yeah, and it does, then also on one side, of course, then there's a terrace outside.
Right.
Okay.
So again, but I think
Charles was my mentor, and what Charles told me was that the clouds, we want to attain. You're going into the clouds, it's like into these heavens, and the windows are supposed to give you this lighter feeling. When you're in the building, you're almost like going into the clouds because of all the glass around you. And of course the design is just for decoration, but it's literally meant to make you feel uplifted and lighter in this building.
I was just going to other comment. If you're sitting in one of the right part of the garden and at the right time of day, the Hall of Brocade Cloud, and I think even one of the other pavilions with the glass, when the sun hits it, it looks just like a lantern. And so, again, we talk about the moon, but, the element of the sun is also very important. When it does that, that just highlights that is a very important building.
I'm intrigued by your explanation of the ease for the temple, with the load bearing driving down. So is that supposed to make the temple more stable in case of wind and disturbances?
It's structurally, it's what allows a pavilion to exist on a single column. It makes, when we were talking structure, when you look at like the Moonlight Pavilion, which is a hexagon with 6 columns, and all of those eaves and so forth, the fact that there isn't, walls that help it stiffen, that it actually can exist on single columns that come straight down. The loads are from the very heavy roof. When you have a roof by itself wants to collapse this way. Okay?
Want to push the columns out.
Right.
Okay.
And so when you have a roof, it wants to do this. To stop the roof from doing this, you need something in tension to hold these corners apart, from falling apart. In our world, we can put a cable or a steel rod or use nails or steel plates to stop it from doing this. And when you're building out of wood, you don't have anything to really stop that tension. So they had to come up with a way of compression weight to hold that column from doing this. So what they did is they loaded up over here. So the roof wants to do this, but by putting enough weight here, you're stopping the corner from doing that. Right? And so it had to be in balance to allow that force to not do that.
So the length of that uprising eave is very carefully calculated, how long that has to be.
Yeah, but they did it by instinct and craftsmanship, just by craft knowledge. Over the centuries, they learned what
the ratio is.
Right.
The roof versus the eave.
So these are master builders,
Right.
and they learn from experience.
As an architect, have there ever been a building built with the tripod instead of 4 pillars? Is it just
Well, St. Louis Arch is a triangle. And
how so?
well, the St. Louis Arch, the big gateway arch, it's actually a triangle section. And they
This
just
is extended on.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And that's a classic one. And every roof truss is a triangle. So the triangle, you can't get away from it. The triangle is the strongest shape that you can build because when it's a square, you can have a square at the same length and it's mush. It doesn't stabilize. But if you have 3 lengths and they're locked together, those 3 lengths, there only can be one shape. Those 3 lengths will not move. Right? It's a self-stable shape, and that's why roof trusses work as well as they do, and it's the basis of all man's construction.
I have a question about the paintings. You know, you said it has 7 shops on it. Would that be, so each owner puts their own shop on? Why, do you know why that is? Is that just a tradition?
That was the way of saying that they really appreciated that experience of that painting, and they really wanted to be a part of that. Partially it's ownership, but it's partially, like if you had a painting and you had like Governor Kitzhaber come to your house and you showed him that painting, you would be honored to have his chop.
He likes to give his
Yes.
chop.
Right. So it becomes part of the story of the painting.
And like that thing at the top, I think you have how they have all the different shops. That's what that is. And one more thing. Now you're talking about, well, it's not more important, it's just higher in status. It's like looking at a family grouping. There's no family, it's just the father. The father, the mother, the children, the grandparents, the whole thing have different importance to make the whole unit just something else.
Another way of looking at it, I thought another way of looking at the pavilion, the greeting pavilion, is like a living room. It's where the outside people come to meet you. It's the face you put on. So in that way, it has its importance. But you still have a kitchen, you have a master bedroom. But that is where your outside meets the inside.
And going back to what we're talking about here, the scholar study really is his inner dream, his inner desire. That's his own personal space.
I liked your comparison of Franklin White's Falling
Yes,
Water with the
yes.
painting, because I've been looking at or reading about Franklin very recently, and he was really a big collector of Japanese prints and was very inspired by Asian culture and art.
Yeah, he built the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo right at the turn of the century in the 1900s. that's when he started collecting, when he was over there. And it was said that the only image he had in his studio of a building that wasn't his was the temple in Tibet. Was it Lhasa? Yeah. So, he was, and when you look at it, the windows and the painted boat Misty Rain, the upper windows up there, the corner glass windows, very bright.